For this problem, we want to find f inverse of x, given f of x equals x minus 2 over x plus 3. Then, we want to find f inverse of negative 2. So when you're finding the inverse function, f inverse of x, your first step is to rewrite your function f of x as its old notation that we used to use in equations of just y. That gives us y equals x minus 2 over x plus 3. And when we do this, the idea of an inverse function is a reflection over the line y equals x. So if you look at a graph and you draw a dotted line for y equals x, whatever graph you have on either side of this line, you'll reflect it to the other side of the line. In other words, you are swapping your x and y values. So to find f inverse of x, we're going to take y and x and swap them with one another. So x equals y minus 2 over y plus 3. And now if we can solve for y alone, that will give us f inverse of x. So in order to get y alone, the first thing that we're going to do is rewrite this x as x over 1. And we're going to do that because now we have two fractions equal to one another, which allows us to cross multiply. So that gives us x times y plus 3 equals 1 times y minus 2. And now if we start simplifying this by distributing the x and distributing the 1, we'll get xy plus 3x equals y minus 2. And from here, the idea is to get 1y. In order to get 1y, our first step should be to get our y's alone. So we're going to move them both to one side of the equation. We'll do that by subtracting y from each side of the equation, and then moving this 3x to the other side so that they're alone. So we're going to subtract the y's and then subtract 3x from each side, leaving us with xy minus y equals negative 2 minus 3x. And now at this point, we can factor out a common y between these two terms. The only way to turn these two y's into one y is to factor out a y. And when we factor out that y, we'll be left with x minus 1. So we have y times x minus 1 equals negative 2 minus 3x. And now, to get the y completely alone, we will divide each side by x minus 1, which leaves us with y equals negative 2 minus 3x over x minus 1. And remember, this y is not the same as our original y. This y does not represent f of x, it represents f inverse of x. So we get f inverse of x equals negative 2 minus 3x over x minus 1. If you had gone through this without moving this y to the other side, and you had moved the xy to the other side, then there's a chance that you could end up changing your signs on this. And that would just be the same thing as multiplying the top and bottom of this fraction by -1. So just to show it, it is also perfectly okay if when you practice this problem on your own, you would have gotten 2 plus 3x over 1 minus x. These are the exact same answer. Okay, so now that we have the inverse function solved for, we can now find f inverse of -2. And f inverse of -2 just means evaluate the inverse function when you plug -2 in for every x. So we're going to plug in a -2 into this x and this x, giving us -2 or -2 minus 3 times our -2 for x over x minus 1 just becomes -2 minus 1. And we'll start simplifying that. We have -2 plus 6. When we multiply -3 times -2, we get +6. Over -2 minus 1 is -3, which leaves us with 4 over -3, which simplifies to -4/3, as we don't leave the negative in the denominator. So f inverse of -2 is -4/3.